أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to our second week. How are you all? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Very good. Going to start from where we left in our audit sampling. We discussed three different types. We introduced three different types of audit sampling in our last class. The first one was attribute sampling. The second was the monetary unit sampling, and the third one was classical variable sampling. We're going to go deeper into attribute sampling in our chapter that we're studying, chapter 8. Okay, so let's start, inshallah. The attribute sampling has 4 steps, and as you will find, the others also have the similar steps. The audit procedure following the attribute sampling is performed in 4 steps, and those 4 steps are planning the sampling and the procedure that we're going to do with the sampling, performing the actual sampling and the procedure. Number 3 is evaluating what we found, and number 4 is documenting our finding. Okay, so these are the 4 steps that we're going to go through, and when we are learning this, we are learning audit procedures. You will see that the audit procedures are similar to each other, but they have slight variations depending on which account you're looking at or which part of the financial statement you're looking at, how important or how significant the account or the part of the financial statement is will have an effect on how the procedure is performed. And this is our first introduction. This is our first time discussing this, so try to follow these steps very carefully. There are 4 steps. The first step is planning, and we're going to only discuss that today. All right, our whole class we're going to discuss the first step, which is planning the procedure. So far so good? Are you following? Are you with me? Okay. In the planning step, in the step of planning the attribute sampling and the audit procedure related to the attribute sampling, we have 3 small activities, 3 small tasks. Now, remember, the audit is made up of a series of audit procedures. The entire audit is made up of a series of audit procedures. So you perform one audit procedure after the other. We are trying to go inside one audit procedure using the attribute sampling. Inside that one audit procedure, we have 4 steps: planning, performing, evaluating, and documenting. So we plan, we perform, we evaluate, we document. Are you following? I need you to stay with me 100%. So we have 4 steps. Inside the first step, we have 3 activities. The first activity is determine the test objectives, which is A. The second, or B, is define the population characteristics. And the third is C, determine the sample size. Okay, so we have 4 steps, and we're going to discuss the first step, which is planning. Inside planning, we have 3 activities. First activity is determine the test objectives. So let's get into that. What do we mean by determine the test objectives? When we say we are going to determine the test objectives, which is activity number 1 in the planning step, the test objective of what we are trying to do using the attribute sampling in our example of the audit procedure that we are discussing is to test the effectiveness of internal control. Effectiveness of internal control. Now, we discussed internal controls twice last week. How many goals or objectives does the internal control procedure seek to accomplish? How many goals does it seek to accomplish? Do you remember? What is the goal of internal control? How many things does the internal control want to accomplish? Anyone from our last class, last week? 3. Anyone else? Is Sharat correct? Anyone else remember how many? No response. Are you guys there? What is the first of the 3? What is the first of the 3 things that the internal control seeks to accomplish? What is the first of the 3 things? True and fair financial statements. Very good. Faisal and Ali, excellent. Now, we need to say it properly and we need to understand it in wording and meaning. Preparation of true and fair financial statements. So we need to remember this like that. The first is preparation of true and fair financial statements. So you should write it down on a piece of paper. On this slide, which should be printed and in front of you, you should write down the first thing that the internal control wants to accomplish is the preparation of true and fair financial statements, right? The second thing is effective and efficient operations, and the third thing is compliance with regulations. These are the 3 things that internal controls seek to accomplish. Now, my question is, these 3 things that the internal control seeks to accomplish, who is trying to accomplish these 3 things? Who is trying to accomplish these 3 things? Who wants to accomplish these 3 activities with the internal controls? Anyone? Khalid, Faisal, Ali, Sharat, Muhammad Al-Sada, anybody? Management. Management of whom? Management of whom? The client. Very good. The client. The client is the company under audit. Very good. Now, who are we? I need an exact answer. I described who we are, and you need to know who we are. Exact answer. Exactly who we are. Independent external auditors. Very good. Independent external auditors. Independent external auditors, that's who we are. Independent meaning we are independent of the client. If the client makes $1 million in profit or loses $1 million, it doesn't make a difference for us. We will not gain or lose anything. We're external. We are not employees of the client. We are coming from outside, and we are working with the board of directors. The board of directors are selected or elected by the shareholders. The shareholders are the owner of the company. The management of the company is preparing the financial statements, and the management of the company has put in place in the company certain internal controls. Our job when we do this audit procedure is to test the effectiveness of the internal controls. So let's say the management has put in place a particular internal control for a particular purpose. Our job as the independent external auditor is to test whether the internal control is working properly or not. Are you following? So the objective for this particular audit procedure is to test the effectiveness of the internal control. So far, so good. Are you following? The internal control is the environment inside which the financial statements are prepared. The internal control is the environment inside which the financial statement is prepared. I'm going to give you an example so that you can remember the purpose of this internal control and the financial statements prepared under the internal control environment, inside the internal control environment. Follow me. Let's say you know of a family, you know of a very good family who is known. The family is known for good manners, and the family is known for being a very good, reputable family. You know the people of the family are well known, they're well behaved, they're well educated, they're religious, all the good qualities you have in a family. Now, you know of the family. My question to you is, when a son or a daughter is coming out of that family, raised in that family, what is your expectation of that son or daughter? Do you think the son or daughter coming from that family would be good or not good? What is your expectation? Ali says you expect the child, son or daughter, to be good because the family is good. The internal control is the family, and the financial statement is the child coming from that family. If the internal controls are good, if the client has procedures for preparing good financial statements, running good operations, following the regulations, then the financial statements prepared in that environment, your expectation is going to be good. Now, let me ask you this. Is there a guarantee that every single child coming from that family is going to be 100% good? Is there a guarantee? Can you guarantee that every child will be good? You cannot guarantee. Very good. The answer is no. So it is possible that the internal control is good, but the financial statements may not be that good, but it is unlikely. It is unlikely. When the control is tested and the controls prove to be effective, the financial statements are usually good coming out of that internal control environment. So our goal here, our goal that we're trying to accomplish here with this audit procedure is to test the effectiveness of the internal control. So we want to test the effectiveness of the internal control. So far, so good? Your understanding? The second activity, or activity number B, under the planning is to define the population characteristics. So we want to test internal control, and we want to test one internal control at a time. So you will test one internal control at a time to see whether the internal control is working the way the management says it's supposed to work, or is it just a written procedure and no one follows the procedure. That's what you want to test. You want to test whether the internal control procedure is followed or not. To test that, you have to define the population characteristics from which you're going to take the sample. So the first characteristic of the population that you want to know is what is the population. So remember our example from last class that we want to know any check that is written in the amount of 10,000 or larger, right? $10,000 or 10,000 reals, whatever the currency is in the client's environment. We want to know any check that the client has written that is 10,000 or higher, because the internal control procedure says that any check that the client will write that is 10,000 or above or larger will have two signatures. That is the internal control. Now, why does the client have that internal control? Why do you think they require two signatures on checks that are 10,000 or larger? What is the purpose? What do you think they seek to accomplish with that internal control? Minimize fraud. Very good. Faisal, Sharat, excellent. Minimize fraud. Now, we are not testing the accuracy of the check that is written, nor are we testing the date, nor are we testing if it's paid to the right place. We're not testing any of that. Our question is only one question. That is, the client is saying that we have a procedure where every check that is 10,000 or larger must be signed by two people. Our question is, do they follow that procedure or not? That is the question. That's what we are testing. To test that, we are going to look at a population of all the checks that are 10,000 or larger. So our population that we're going to sample from, the population is all the checks that is 10,000 or above or larger. So we cannot look at all those checks. We're going to sample. The second thing we need to define is what is the sampling unit. The sampling unit is what do we consider as one sample. And in our example, one sampling unit is one check. So if we take one check, we can perform the audit procedure. The audit procedure is looking at that check and testing, do they have one signature or two signatures? One check is sufficient for us, right? So our sampling unit is, what is our sampling unit? What is our sampling unit? Anyone? One check. Our sampling unit is one check. Okay. There are other procedures where we might need more than one document to test. For example, we could do an audit procedure where we need one invoice and one sales order. So the audit procedure may be that we are trying to compare something, let's say the date in the invoice and the date in the sales order. We want to compare which date is earlier, the date on the sales order or date on the invoice. In that case, our sampling unit would be two pieces of paper, the invoice as well as the sales order. But in this particular procedure, in this particular audit procedure, our sampling unit is defined as one check. Okay. The third thing is deviation from control. Deviation from control. When we look at a check, we will say either they follow the internal control in that check or they have deviated. So if we find only one check, if we find only one signature, in the check, then we call it a deviation. We call it a Deviation. Now remember this word exactly. This is precise. If you say it's inaccurate, if you say it's incorrect, if you say it is false, those are not correct words to use when you're testing the internal control. You either follow or you deviated, meaning you did not follow. So in internal control, you have deviation. Remember, deviation in internal control does not necessarily guarantee that the financial statements are inaccurate, but it is an indication that the controls that they have are not working properly. All right? The controls they have are not working properly. So deviation is when you find that the client is not following the audit procedure. Okay? All right. You can ask me, you can stop me and ask me to repeat if you don't understand. I'm going to continue, inshallah. The third, or activity number C under the planning, is to determine the sample size. So now we know what audit procedure we're going to do to test the internal control. We know what the population is. We know what one unit is, and we know what we will consider a deviation. We now come and see how many checks do we need to select from the population of checks that are 10,000 or larger. So the first thing under the determination of sample size is to look at the desired confidence level or sampling risk. The second is to look at the tolerable deviation rate. And the third thing is to look at the expected population deviation rate. So we want to determine the sample size, how many we need to sample. The first thing to look at is, the first thing to decide is, what is the desired confidence level or risk? The desired level of assurance that the sample results show that the control is effective. Now, how sure do we want to be about the sample size or the sample itself? How much risk can we bear? So this brings us to the question that we answered last week, which is, what is sampling risk? Can you remind us, anyone remind us what we mean by sampling risk? What do we mean by sampling risk? If you participate, it will go much smoother and easier. So tell me. And if you're falling behind, then it will be difficult for you, because we are building up and we are going to go into something that is deeper, inshallah. I need your participation. Anyone remember what sampling risk is? What does it mean when we say sampling risk? Very good. Failing to choose, failing to select, right? The risk of a non-representative sample. The risk of a non-representative sample. So, how much risk can we take? How much confident do we want to be? It depends on how much we want to rely on the internal control. How much does this internal control matter to us? How much does this internal control matter to us? So based on that, we will determine the confidence level and sampling risk. If we want to rely on the internal control, if the internal control matters to us, it is important for the auditor, then the confidence level is set at 90 or 95% generally. It's higher. So when we have a 90% confidence level, that means how much is the control risk, sampling risk, I'm sorry. How much is the sampling risk? 5% sampling risk when the confidence level is what? If we have 5%, 95, very good. It should always be 100 together, right? Very good. So we have a 95% confidence level, excellent, when we have 5% sampling risk. And we want to have a higher confidence and lower risk when the internal control is important and matters to us. All right? So that's the first under C, determining sample size, right? So if we have a larger confidence level, then we would have to go for a larger sample, okay? The second thing is tolerable deviation rate. How many deviations can we tolerate and still say the control is effective? It depends on how important the control is. So if the control is very important to us, if we want to rely on the control and the control is very important to us, then we can tolerate only a small deviation, 3 to 5%. If it is moderately important, if the internal control is moderately important, then we can tolerate a little bit more in deviation. Now, this is 6 to 10% is showing on your screen. The 3 to 5% and the 6 to 10%, these are approximate numbers. When you go to work for an audit firm, you will see that they have their own tables, they have their own procedures, they have their own way of doing things. And you will find them varying from one firm to other, and you'll find them varying from what we are studying. But it will be in the same framework. It will be following the same guidelines. So the higher the importance of the internal control is, the lower the deviation rate is going to be, right? Are you following? And the last thing is the expected population deviation rate. Now, the population deviation expectation is based on your understanding and experience with the client. So let me ask you a question. Let's say you have a student coming from a well-known teacher. You know the teacher is very good, and you know the students studying under this teacher is also very, very, very good. Now, when you're testing that student, what is going to be your expectation from the student? Do you expect the student to make a lot of mistakes when you ask them questions, or do you expect them to answer your questions correctly? If it's coming from a very good teacher and you know that the teacher is excellent, what is going to be your expectation of the student? Anyone? You expect high expectations, right? You expect the student to be good. When you're expecting the student to answer questions correctly and you expect the student to be good, do you need to ask the student a lot of questions? Or you can ask just a few difficult questions, and if they can answer it correctly, you know that the student knows. This good student, do you need to ask the student a lot of questions or just a few? Few, right? Because you expect the student to not make mistakes. So if you don't expect the population to have a lot of errors, right? You expect the population to have very few errors, the sample size can be small, right? You can take a few samples just like you'd ask fewer questions. And if you have a student you're not sure of, or a client that you're not sure of, and you expect a lot of errors, you would need to really ask a lot of questions, meaning take a lot of sample from the population to see really whether there is any mistake or not. Okay, so the higher the expected population is, the higher the expected population deviation rate is, the larger the sample size is going to be. Clear? Okay, now we are building up slowly with simple concepts and simple ideas, and you need to stay up to date. You need to stay current on what we have studied. If you're having any difficulty understanding what is a representative sample, what is confidence level, what is sampling risk, what is involved in the planning of the attribute sampling, you need to go back and listen to those lectures and study the material. And if you don't understand something, you can ask me, because we are going to take a jump in the next few days to something little bit more involved. It is not going to be difficult for you if you are understanding what we are building up to. If you're following what we're building up to, it's going to be very easy for you, inshallah, because you're all intelligent students. Inshallah, I know you are good students, otherwise you wouldn't be in this course. So building up to that, these concepts cannot be having any doubts about them. When I say sampling risk, or when I say population deviation rate, expected population deviation rate, and you have to think about it a lot and try to remember, well, I'm not sure whether this is this and that, then you will have a very difficult time. You need to know this just like you know the alphabet, because everything else will build on them. And if you have to think, when you're reading a word, you have to think that whether this is a letter, this letter is A or S or F or N, then you will not be able to read anything. Just like that, these concepts must be internalized. Okay, so I'll stop here with the lecture, and I'm going to discuss something in the remaining of the class. Do you have any questions on the material we discussed so far, from the beginning of the semester until now? Any difficulty, any questions? And if you're not sure whether you have any questions or not, I need you to go back and update yourself while the material is still small. And I'm going slow, but it's not going to be like that soon, okay? So I need you to catch up and make sure that you're following me. All right? Any questions? And you can email me anytime when you're studying the material. Any questions you have, you can ask me in the next classes. I'm going to ask you many, many times. You'll be tired of me asking you, do you understand? Do you have any questions? Because your understanding and your clarity of the material is very important for me. This is going to build a foundation for you as you're entering the profession of accounting. This is going to build a foundation for you, and it's very important for me because this is very important for you. Okay? All right. You'll be tired of me, I know, but I will not leave you alone. Okay? Now, the next thing that I would like to discuss is the importance of attendance. Now, you're here, I know, but you may pass this on to your other friends who are missing classes and so forth. This is a form that I filled out, and we regularly fill out from potential employers. So when you go and apply for a job in one of the accounting firms or employers in town, they send us some forms to fill out to learn more about you. And if the student has attended, for example, my classes, one of the questions the employer has is, how diligent has the candidate been with attending your classes? Now I go back to the attendance record and see how many classes the student missed. And if the student missed 20% of the classes, even though the student passed, I would say in that form that the student missed 20% of the classes. That means 20% of the classes is 1 out of 5 work days in a week. The employer does not want somebody who is missing a class or missing a day of work every week on an average. They don't need somebody like that. So this is something that they're very serious about, and this missing of classes will come back to you when you go to work. This is not a good habit, and you should attend, and you should attend and participate, right? When I ask you a question, again, you will have, there are other questions that says, how much does the candidate participate? How much does the candidate interact? All those questions are there, and we will answer them. Every single professor of yours will answer them honestly. Now, your other professors may not share this information with you, but I'm sharing with you. This is applicable to not just my class, but any other class you're taking. So they will go, and each professor knows the students who are answering the questions and participating, and the students who just log in and stay quiet or go somewhere else, right? So this is well known. Even if the professor has 40 students, the professor knows the students who are answering the questions. So be among those, so that you can learn primarily and know that this is not the end. It will come back to you if you do not. All right? Are you following? Are you with me? Are you there? Very good. So we have Ali, we have Faisal, we have Sharat, we have Khalid, and where is Mu'tasim, and where is Muhammad Al Jabir, and where is Muhammad Al Sada? Where are you? Here is Muhammad Al Jabir. Where else? Who else is there? Muhammad Al Sada, where are you? And Mu'tasim. Okay. Perhaps not listening. Okay. Now, in the next few minutes, I'm going to discuss the details of this course. There is a page on the syllabus which is in Blackboard that details out every single day's plan and all the assessments and assignments. Have you looked at it? Anybody looked at it? I asked you to download and print that page and keep it hard copy with you. Have you looked at it? Anyone? Very important. I need you to print that page, download that page from Blackboard and print it. This is what it looks like. This is what it looks like. This one page. It has all the details of every single day, what we're going to do, when the quizzes are, when the exams are, when the assignments are, no surprises. So this page must be printed and kept by your side so that you have a plan for the entire semester. I don't like surprises and I don't like to give surprises. So there are no surprises. All the dates are known. All the agenda is known, right? So what we're going to do in this course is first we're going to have 4 quizzes, 5% each. The dates and the chapters included in those quizzes are provided in the agenda. And those who are going to plan will find themselves at ease, and I do not change these dates because it harms those students who plan. So 4 quizzes. There are no extra assignments, there are no extra quizzes. We don't have time. We only have 13 weeks left. 1 week has already passed, and one of these weeks, the last week, is in Ramadan. We are only going to review. So we have very short time and we have a good bit of material to cover. Very important material to cover. So we don't have time for a lot of extra stuff. Make sure you take every single assignment seriously. The dates are known. The material is given to you. So there are no surprises. The midterm exam, the tentative date for that is 24th of February. It will include chapters 8, 9, and 10, and it's 35% of the grade. So it's a big deal. And the format of the exam, how many multiple choice questions, how many essay questions, all of those things I'm going to discuss. And I'm going to answer all of your questions about the details of the exam. But the tentative date we're trying to shoot for is 5 weeks from now. And if we get the rooms and the proctors, it's a common exam, then that's going to be the date, right? So this will be very close to 24th of February, the midterm exam. The third thing we have is an audit simulation, which is on the 17th of April. Now, if we meet face to face, right, then the simulation is going to be different. But if we continue online, and I'm giving you a plan based on the understanding that we will just continue online. If we do continue online, this audit simulation is going to be a couple of hours, and it's going to be on a Saturday, which is 17th of April, from 9 o'clock until 11 o'clock in the morning, right? So that you plan accordingly. And anything leading up to this, the week before that, I'm going to discuss and review and answer questions on what you should expect in the audit simulation. All right. The audit simulation is something we offered this audit simulation last spring. We have been offering in this course an audit simulation since the year 2016, but the audit simulation that we offered in the face-to-face class is much more involved than the one that we do online. If we resume our online classes, we may go back to the original audit simulation. But if we are still online, we'll do this. We'll do the 2-hour audit simulation. The audit simulation is an excellent experience for all students, and the students love it, and they learn a lot from it. And they most of the students score perfectly in it. So this is something that requires a lot of work from us. It's very easy for us to give you a closed book exam, then give you an audit simulation, but it is good for you, and we put in that effort so that you can gain from it. All right, more on this later, inshallah. And the last thing we have is a final exam, right? The final exam, Ali, I will discuss the audit simulation in more detail, okay? I'm going to discuss this. It's not like a case study. I will discuss this more. And most students want more audit simulations in other courses as well after they finish the one with us. So it's going to be a very good experience for you, inshallah. And it will actually help you answer interview questions when you go for an interview at a job, as well as it will help you when you start working as an accountant or auditor. I have emails coming from students, past former students, who are benefiting from the audit simulations that they have completed in our classes. The last is the final exam, which the date will be announced by the university. It's 35% of the grade, and it involves chapters 12, 13, 14, and 16. We will study one chapter more than what you see on the slide, that is chapter 11. It is not included in the midterm, neither it is included in the final. It's going to be tested in the quiz as well as the audit simulation, okay? All right, so here is the plan. Here is the general plan for the course, and you should prepare yourself accordingly. Now, before I go to the next thing, do you have any questions on what I'm expecting, the details of the course, what I'm expecting in the course? Clear? All right, very good, mashallah. Now I'm going to leave you with a story, and I have been, in Qatar University since 2011. I've been here 10 years, and alhamdulillah, it's a blessing. I have been, I have had a very good experience, and the students are excellent, and the environment is excellent, and it's ni'mah from Allah, from Allah on me, that I am here, being able to teach students such as you. And I have a story that I share with all my students in all of my classes, because there is something to learn from that story. The story is an incident between Imam Ash-Shafi'i and Imam Malik. Imam Malik is a great scholar, and Imam Ash-Shafi'i is also a great scholar. Alim, we respect both of them. We do not say who is better and who's not better. We say all of them are our imams. And Imam Ash-Shafi'i was a student of Imam Malik, and Imam Ash-Shafi'i said that whenever he was present in front of Imam Malik, he would be very careful in turning the page so that the sound would not disturb Imam Malik. Now, how much sound does it make when you turn the page? It's nothing, right? The sound is very, very little. But Imam Ash-Shafi'i was careful to not make that sound because he respected Imam Malik so much. He also said that he was with Imam Malik. He studied with Imam Malik for many years, and he never could drink water in front of him because he would have to raise his hand, and he didn't want to do that in front of Imam Malik. Now, I shared this story with you because there is something to learn. Imam Shafi'i had so much respect for his teacher, so much love for his teacher, and that's why he became such a great scholar. And my experience with the students at Qatar University is that 99% of the students have excellent akhlaq and they have excellent manners, and I am very, very happy and satisfied with my conduct, with their conduct with me, and their way of behaving. But there is a small, very small, maybe less than 1% of students who do not have any manners. They don't know how to ask a question. They don't know how to answer a question. They don't know how to approach the teacher. They don't know how to be in front of the teacher. And I would like to share this story with you because sometimes, when this happens, it gives me a lot of distress. I take this very seriously. I like what I do, and I love my students. I want every one of them to be successful. They're just like my children. And some students have no manners when they come to see their exam paper or asking a question about the exam and so forth. I'm very careful in grading the exams, and I'm very careful in giving the students any extra marks if I can. And you find a student every now and then coming and arguing for 30 minutes for half a mark. And I could show the student three other places where I have given them more than half a mark where they don't deserve it, right? So this is something that gives me a lot of distress, and I want to share this with you. While I know, inshallah, all of you are in the 99% of the students who have great akhlaq, excellent manners, and I don't have to worry about anything. But I just want to share this with you just in case there is a student in any of my classes who is like that. I just want to let them know that it gives me a lot of distress, and I do not appreciate that kind of behavior. All right? And I look forward to having every single one of you in my class. We're going to have a lot of fun, and we're going to learn together, and this is going to build a very strong foundation for you as you step into the profession of accounting. And I do not expect that the class will end the relationship between us. I expect all of you to stay in touch with me, and I expect to be at your service, providing you with support beyond this class as you enter and you success in your profession. All right? With that, I would thank you, and inshallah, I am going to see you on Tuesday, inshallah. All right? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.